This is the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast, hosted by Youle. Each new moon, we'll explore with our guests how to think globally and act locally with ecofeminism. Awaken all your senses. The spirit of the witches comes to your ears. The Sabbath is that way. Gang of Witches.
Welcome back to the third edition of the Gang of Witches Ebitda podcast. I'm Youle, and for this edition of the series, I'm here at the home of the director of Ibiza Preservation, Sandra Benbeniste. And it feels like the right place to continue to unravel the stories of the island's women activists, because Sandra, who's from Barcelona, has led some inspiring movements. First and foremost, the one which led us to meet around about 8 years ago, when Sandra set up the Blue Sea Alliance to tackle a huge capitalist oil monster called Cairn Energy. But since then, 3 more similar ideas have also been shut down, all of them looking to set up shop just off the shore of Ibiza and Formentera, and she won. And for me, that feels like a great place to begin this conversation. Sandra, welcome to the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having us into your actual home. It was very unexpected to sort of move the interview here today, but I'm even more delighted that we're joined by Betty and Pumba.
Pumba. They're 2 beautiful cats, also woman cats, so we're plenty of feminine energy today.
I love the fact that you've what did you name Pumba after?
From the Lion King, the movie Lion King. Pumba was one of the friends of the little lion, so we thought that was a beautiful name for our little cat.
They look very, very happy and, providing a nice little furry feline backdrop to today's show. So first off, I want you to tell us a little bit about what was actually on the table, or how you first heard about this prospective invasion by the oil company 8 years ago of our beautiful island.
Well, that was a very, I think, critical moment in Ibiza. I remember talking to different stakeholders, to business, to different special people that really had knowledge on this topic, and everybody thought nothing could be done. We had heard that Madrid had given approval to this company to do these explorations at a very deep level, which is really dangerous because when you're exploring at very, very deep, risks are very high that something can happen, which is what actually happened in Mexico, in the Gulf of Mexico. So my surprise was really just almost recently arrived in the island. I maybe had like 3 years here, and just like, why nothing is done? Why nobody's moving? And why is it taken for granted that we have to have oil in our shore? So actually what I thought is, why don't we create an alliance? Why don't we unite? Because talking to different parties, I was really realizing nobody wanted oil. It was not something of environmentalists against private sector. No, it was tourism didn't want, different types of business, not only tourist related, didn't want it, because nobody wants to have Ibiza in the imagination of anybody linked to the oil industry. So to me, it was really the occasion of, why don't we make clear that nobody on this island wants it? So from a political perspective, it's going to be interesting for any political party to support the movement, plus really to prove that all the economy is also against it. So nobody really has any reason to be supporting this project.
I mean, it's pretty clear just by asking that question, you feel quite passionate about this. But how did it actually make you feel when you first heard that this was about to happen so close to Ibiza?
It's just like nonsense. I think that those decisions are taken in Madrid or in other capitals further, and they don't realize that 90% of the island lives from tourism. And right now, I think we are at a stage that we understand that economic development can go hand in hand with environmental protection. And maybe in the 70s or in the 80s, we had this confrontational point of view, and it was business against environmentalists. But nowadays, local business, those that have a bar, a hotel, a restaurant, of course, want to have a beautiful sea. So it's obvious that we all want to have this amazing, beautiful sea and to keep it for next generations. So it's our duty to protect it. It's our duty to really make it very clear that this is nonsense. And as soon as we kind of raise our voices, that we put together the pact, which is the alliance, we were able to find in Madrid the ways without, because the big concern was, we would need to pay a lot for Cairn to go because they have already a permit. But we found a way with the environmental impact assessment and with different legal strategies, we found a way so that we didn't have to pay, or the government didn't have to pay any compensation to these companies.
I mean, obviously we've seen what's possible with oil spills. Only last summer when Mauritius, another unspoiled, stunning white island, experienced a major disaster when a boat poured more than 1,000 tons of fuel into the lagoon there. And just like it could have been here in Ibiza, it happened close to two environmentally protected marine ecosystems, which again, if it had gone ahead here, that's, exactly what could have happened to our one network or saving grace for our waters of the Balearics. The Posidonia could have been intrinsically and seriously damaged in the long run. So your work, even 8 years later, is the stuff of legend to shut that down.
I think it was really that the success was because we were many of us. No, I really think that what we just did was to have the idea that we needed to create an umbrella, like a new brand, because if it had been directly an Ibiza Preservation project, like our foundation, most likely we wouldn't have had the support that we had. Because we all know, and this is not only Ibiza, it's everywhere, that egos and logos are brands. So I think that what facilitated the success was really that there was this new umbrella, this new brand that we created, the Alliance Mar Blava, Alliance Blue Sea. So under this umbrella, everybody felt comfortable that, as I said, the tourism sector, the business, the administration, everybody, we started more than 20 movement or 20 members, and now we're 120 members. So I think also what has really been the success is that after stopping those 3/5, depending how you count it, it could be like even 5 projects, we're still going because we really now are aiming, our new objectives is having a law that is going to prevent from having new projects. Because till now, what we did is to stop those projects that were on the table. But it's like when you have a pipe with holes, so you're covering one hole, but another hole can start, and you have again a problem. So if you have a law that prevents the pipe to be there, there won't be more holes because nobody's going to be putting new projects on the table, and that's where we're at. And that's something that I also want to mention, the merit of the movement. It's really all the women and men that are part of it now. Again, by coincidence, it's 3 women that are like the main team, that are Sarah is the main leader, and she's really doing now, talking to every political party, doing the political part. And I think she mentioned to me the other day that there's no other oil movement that really has been going on for 8 years. So that's also, we have had the patience, and we meet every 2 months, and we really also, because when there's a very big problem, of course everybody mobilizes. But when it's like a long-term process, then sometimes it's easier than people just go because there are other priorities. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great thing about this project that we're still, many of us, in different moments, in putting energy and understanding the importance of the long term, which in this case is having a law that really prohibits to have oil drilling in this part of the Mediterranean.
That's kind of pretty much how you sort of exploded onto Ibiza when you first got here. That was you got here in 2011, you moved over here then with your husband. That's the first thing that you kind of really got your teeth into when you arrived, your first big project. Is that kind of what gave birth to Bita Preservation, or was it something that already existed, or how did that unfold?
Ibiza Preservation was created in 2008, so it had been going, but I think that has this style, because this was the first alliance, but then came the Alliance for Water, and then the Plastic Free Alliance, and now we have the Regeneration Community. So I think the style, the way, because it's not so much the what, but the how. The how is also important, and the how is, as I mentioned, working in an alliance, putting together everybody, understanding what we have in common, and really focusing on what we can do together. So that style, I think, started with Mar Blava, and we can say that I put that on the table to start, and I think now is defining the how Ibiza Preservation is working in the different topics that we approach, which means that no matter how much budget, how many resources we have, if we go go alone, we won't have a solution to these very complex problems. We need to really have the ability to collaborate with everybody, with different stakeholders. And I think that's where the feminine energy can help. Now we were talking about it. It's just not about only achieving a result, but really it's important to have a process that it makes everybody comfortable so that people won't go away and will stay with you. And as we have a saying in Spanish, we say, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together, like in a group, no? And we want to go far because the objectives in the environment are far-reaching and complex. So we need to build these groups and these alliances and have accomplices.
What were you doing before you came to Ibiza that kind of gave you this desire, I guess, to make such sort of eco changes when you got here? What was it? What were you doing prior to arriving here that kind of gave you this fire in your belly to get on the scene of activism here?
Well, I've been lucky, and I've been working in different countries, in Guatemala, in Costa Rica, in Mexico, in issues related to the environment. But I think what I did just before coming here, that was in Zaragoza, and that really was for me very inspirational. I had a boss that really had this style of partnerships, alliances, and that was the international exhibition for water. So that's these things that unite 120 countries, and then you have in a city, an exhibition. In this case, the topic was water. So it was in the city where I was working in Zaragoza, and we had the responsibility to create a whole building that we did in clay, amazing, very, very, very beautiful, for all the hundreds of NGOs that were working around water. And we had to do a common exhibition, a common program, we didn't want to have like different stands so that everybody would have information and compete against each other and give just a few leaflets. But we wanted to really do videos that were shared and it was for 2 months, activities every day, amazing. And for me, we started when we had the first conversations with the Red Cross that thinks water is a social priority, or others that water is much more of an environmental priority. And the process of having everybody getting together and understanding how we could really collaborate, that was very, very inspiring. We achieved very interesting results. And then projects, thanks to that way of collaboration that we were doing also with the business sector, was much easier because they saw us as really having one common vision and goals. So that for me was very inspiring. That happened in 2008. So that was a bit before. Then I've been a consultant for corporate social responsibility. And that also has helped me to understand the importance of business participation in solving problems. Because very traditionally in NGOs, business are the enemy. And that's for me, very old school. We really have to understand that we're all united in certain goals, and protection of the beautiful landscape and sea that we have is obviously a common goal. I mean, no tourists would come if we didn't have a beautiful nature. So that's really having the possibility and the openness to work very closely with business for me has also been important in terms of building these alliances and considering them not just like as a fundraising, like a resource, but also they can be part of the solution because they have the technology, they have the resources. And if we're talking plastic free, there's no way we're going to be reducing plastic, one single-use plastic, if business are not really deciding to eliminate the straws or change the water system so that they don't need to have little bottles. So it's obvious that they have to be part of the solution. And I really enjoy in finding what we have in common, no? That the part of communicating and understanding that. I remember, just as an example, one day with a banker, someone that worked in a bank, he told me we were developing a corporate social responsibility program before I came here, and he was telling, finally, I'm going to tell my daughter, who studies environmental sciences, that I'm doing something for the environment. No? It's even the worst, no? Like we think banking. When you talk to the human beings, to the person that is taking decisions, sometimes you find things in common, of course, and they're very proud to be able to tell their daughters or sons that they are not the bad guys. Mm-hmm. So I think if we're concentrating in finding really that spark that unites us, we can move forward. And then, of course, there are contradictions and we have maybe decisions that won't be able to unite us. But there's so much that we can do that let's leave that the differences for the end. And when we approach them, we will have a relationship with them. It won't be the enemy that we only read about in the press, because the golf course or the whatever. I mean, it's once you have a personal connection, then it's easier to try to really solve issues. And another example is boats, all the black waters that they're throwing to the sea. And they're super committed and to find solutions, the marinas, the clubs, the yachting clubs, because we all know that we don't want to be seeing dirty waters in the sea. And right now, 99% of the boats are throwing the black water in the sea, which is disgusting, but it's a reality. So they are very involved in, let's see how we can promote the technology that they already have in the harbors, the installations, so that users can use it more, and how we find a solution.
That's definitely something we're going to talk more about in terms of, the cleanliness of water and, kind of the safe way to dispose of toxic waste. But I think I also want to talk about the other massive achievement of Mar Blava, or the Blue Sea Alliance. And I think, it's very easy in this life to not celebrate the good news. And we could sit here and talk about all the issues that Ibiza is facing. And no doubt we're going to get into some of that later in this podcast. But I think, it is good to start on the good foot. And, this kind of feels like a moment in time, particularly right now, where we need to focus on some of the positives. And the work you do really does deserve celebrating. And, of course, the work of the people in your team, which you were kind of sort of telling me, it seems like a lot of the big projects at Bita Preservation are actually led by women.
Yes, it's funny. I just realized yesterday at a meeting of 9 of us, it was like the big team, different project coordinators, etc. We're all women. And we haven't done it on purpose. And if you ask me why is it that there's more women? I think one of the very important reasons, because of the style, the way we work, which, as I said, is very focused in the process and in making alliances and being flexible, and not just short-term, fast achievement of an objective, which is maybe more of the masculine energy. I mean, I of course love having everything and mixed in the team. I think it's the ideal. But when you realize that you don't know why, because every person we have been hiring independently, why is it that we're all women? I think in a way means that there's a lot of feminine energy focused in the environment, because of the responsibility towards next generations, because of the responsibility, of course, of keeping the planet and the earth safe for next generations, and for us that live here now. And this way of maybe having a bit more left hand, mano izquierda, we say in Spanish, no, not so being able to really conciliate and to find the way to achieve things that without hurting people in the process, without making enemies. No, we're really trying to have everybody on board. And I think this applies for Ibiza Produce, or for the observatory, or for Plastic Free, or for any of the projects we're working at.
I think it's a beautiful story, and I love the fact that, there's such a powerful group of women driving this project forward. And you said, only in a meeting yesterday, there was 9 women, chairing that whole process. But, clearly this Mar Blava project that you created at the very, very beginning was, something that was very powerful. As you explain, it's expanded enormously. It's grown. There's 120 members in it now. It's massive. But, back when we first met 8 years ago, when I came to interview you to talk about, what I could do to try and help you with that project in particular, Sienna Miller got behind it. Kate Moss got behind it. There was a big petition being run to try and sort of, stop Ibiza being infiltrated and abused by these moneymakers. But my favourite part of that whole story was when I saw that Greenpeace's Rainbow Warriorship was parked in the Ibiza Marina. And for me, that was a real moment because they were juxtaposed right behind the Gumball Rally. And I think those ridiculous cars worth millions, and all the men gathering there, standing in front of these big, expensive cars with their Gucci sunglasses. And then there on deck was another female activist that I met called Marina, who was responsible for campaigning for renewables for Greenpeace Spain, who I also interviewed. And it was so ludicrous to have that ship right behind that whole scene. And I wondered if you had anything to do with getting the Greenpeace Rainbow Warriorship come out to save us.
Yes, of course. It was all part of the movement. I mean, that was the beauty of Mar Blava. Then there was Ibiza, that was an amazing group of activists that were also taking pictures naked, just with elements, but to be sure that that social media were taking about it. So I think the beauty was that we gathered a lot of momentum and energy around it. And so I can't remember now, but one of the persons of the team or someone said, I know Greenpeace, I think this is so big, and being summer we can call them because the boat is in the Mediterranean, and if we explain them they can come. So they came because of the Alianza Mar Blava, of us, of course. I mean, it was not a coincidence. It was because we had gathered that momentum. They considered that it was worth for them coming and adding their strength. And of course, in terms of papers and visibility, it's a milestone. It is important. I remember doing a flotilla, around that iconic boat, and we were many of us in different smaller boats, sailing boats, and so that day was really a party. It was like, yes, we're strong, and it has a picture. It's very beautiful for using that picture of Greenpeace, and then all of us in many other types of boats, and I think that really was a milestone. And of course, we don't know if we would have achieved the same results, but I think what shows is that when you're putting energy, you're achieving things, then you're able to call others to join because it's becoming attractive and they also want to be part of it.
Well, it sounds like you're doing an amazing job. And I just want to say, one more success that obviously Mar Blava proposed was to protect the whale and dolphin corridor on the Levantine Balearic coast. So 45,000 square kilometres were declared under the Barcelona Convention as a specially protected area of Mediterranean importance, which resulted in Spain's Ministry of Energy being forced to archive all oil and gas prospecting projects and requesting in this area, which is nothing short of actually quite amazing. Like, really, that achievement really does need a bit of recognition. And I think, to have such a massive area sort of cordoned off essentially from that kind of invasion again is just incredible.
It's part of the strategy. I mean, that's like when we achieve the law, when we have the law, then this would be included in not having in all the Mediterranean free of inspections. But because it's much more difficult to have a law, the corridor was like a strategy we had, like, okay, let's start with this. So we protect a bunch of, and because there was these very special species that were using this area, like these dolphins and whales, etc., under as international convention, we could use that. So it's been like really like a puzzle, like finding how can we try to protect the different areas with the different tools that we have, with the final goal of not having oil drilling in any of the Mediterranean. And that's something that France has already achieved. So it would be continuing the area of the Mediterranean. So it's not that we're the first. We would be following on the French example. And as I said, the corridor was like, okay, this is an easier way to start to have a bunch of a surface of this sea protected, at least because we can grant that this area that whales and dolphins are using, because it's amazing, but the noise that they do when they're exploring for oil drilling is tremendous. We had some tests and we were kind of putting them for people to understand the importance of this, and it was like a bomb. So imagine dolphins and whales that are in their homes, and you have these like amazing noises disturbing, and it's been proven that it really damages enormously. So that's why we used, inverted commas, that the dolphins and the whale corridor as a way to start for the final protection that we want, which is nothing happening regarding oil prospection or drilling in the whole Mediterranean.
I mean, you said that was part of the strategy, but obviously you studied law. So, that was your end goal, to get something, in black and white printed out that basically couldn't be changed.
Exactly. It's when you have international conventions, it's very important to use them, because our government sometimes lays back, and so they have to then commit to obey to what they've committed. So having this Convenio de Barcelona, the Barcelona Convention, really a very good framework for the Spanish government to have to obey. That's why now the process that we're doing with all the political parties has been much more complex, because not all the political parties agreed on putting stopping oil drilling or oil prospections. And it's the thing, the very good work Sara is doing now as coordinator of the Alliance, as really trying to lobby with all of them to have consensus under the new climate change law, that it's also connected, and really trying to make it as specific as possible, to really use these laws as a really the final framework, so that it won't happen again. Because now it's like you stop one, and then, as I said, you have another company wanting to do explorations. So I really think we're using the legal tools as much as we can, as well as we can, to stop and prevent from having further projects.
Yeah, hats off to you, to be fair. I mean, I just feel like, it sounds like to me, you're not just kind of doing the stuff you do for Ibiza Preservation. You're sort of like almost kind of dabbling in local politics.
No. The beauty is that, as I say, we're a team. We've been really lucky. We have a lawyer in Madrid that is helping us a lot. Sara, that is ex-Greenpeace and is now the coordinator, knows a lot about energy and the different policies. And so we're all learning. It's a learning process for all of us. But for sure, I think what I really want to insist in what's as the common link to all the things we're doing is how important and how much stronger and bigger we are by building these alliances. If it was Sandra with Ibiza Preservation alone, we would never have been able to do this. And that's why we copied the model and we said, why don't we do something similar, which is the Water Alliance, for water problems in Ibiza. So it's like, let's use the experience that one project gives us to start another process, and then creating the team so that, in this case, my energy, I'm still part of the board. I meet every 2 months, but the team is running it. So now I can use this energy to start another, and hopefully it will also run alone. So that's, I think what we can do is really facilitate, start the processes, but then put together lots of experts that know much more than I do.
Once upon a time in Ibiza with Joanna Ruby.
Sometimes a protest can be as simple as the plaiting of one's hair and the tying of a ribbon. Sometimes a protest can begin with the ironing of linen trousers and the folding of a cap. Sometimes a protest starts with a weekly rehearsal in the back end of a sports hall in San Antonio. Sometimes a protest is a dance. Sometimes a protest can begin with the clack of castanets and the beating of a drum, with the wailing refrain of a flute carved from oleander. Sometimes a protest is not much more than the routine your grandpa learnt as a schoolboy, and your uncles did it too. Sometimes a protest is a group of people remembering and repeating. Sometimes a protest is a dance. Sometimes a protest starts with linen, hemp, straw and silk, with white, black, red, yellow, pink and gold. Sometimes a protest is attended by your mother, your neighbour, the boy you had a crush on and his sister, and they don't always feel like coming, but they enjoy it when they get there. Sometimes a protest is a weekly get-together that you wonder why you even bother with. Sometimes a protest is a dance. Sometimes a protest is the simple act of meeting on a Friday beside the superyachts that line the Plaza de Smarte in the port of Ibiza. Sometimes a protest is something low-key and acoustic, walled in by polished, shining ship hulls and decibels that are grating. Sometimes a protest is just a funny folk tradition in a place where it was never welcome. Sometimes a protest is a dance. Sometimes a protest is laughed at and ridiculed, ignored and overlooked from the interior of a multi-storey superyacht with soft romantic lighting and tinted windows. Sometimes a protest stops feeling like a protest when the small gathered crowd claps and smiles. Sometimes a protest goes unseen but persists quietly every week, every year, for the few who notice, for the few who follow the faint clack of a castanet on a summer's night in the port of Ibiza, Sometimes a protest is a dance. This is dedicated to the Koya Sabodega, an Ibizan Balpayes traditional folk dance group which for several years has been meeting to dance every Friday evening during summer season in the port of Ibiza. Their performance has often been drowned out by the high decibel electronic music played by the surrounding super yachts. And that's exactly why they keep doing it.
I think that's an incredible strategy, and clearly it is working. And I think, you can't obviously pour all your energy in one specific direction. But I kind of wanted to talk about this year, or last year, sorry. Last year has been very, very different to any other year Ibiza has seen in a very, very, very long time. Obviously, with our main kind of source of income and the economy of Ibiza, our main support network, which is, of course, the tourism, has been sort of taken away. But I think, what's the biggest lesson we've learned from that being removed, that, from an eco perspective?
Well, the problem is it's been so strange that it's very difficult to learn lessons. We still don't know really what is going to happen this summer. But what we would love, of course, when the island was stopped, of course, the parameters and the indicators for the quality of the sea, of the quality of the air were amazing. But we cannot, and we don't want this to happen, that we associate that the environment is going to be healthy if we don't move. If we have to be under a pandemic, under a coronavirus crisis, it's like, no way, We have to be able to have both a beautiful, healthy environment and at the same time a healthy economy, because we do depend on tourism. 90% of people work in something related to tourism in Ibiza. So what we need, and the debate we've been creating and we've started, is how do we make tourism more sustainable? And that's something that has been on the table and has been said for many years, but it doesn't happen. I mean, not many actually companies have the sustainability element inside. And so that's where I think we can help and find a strategy for everybody to understand that it's in their interest to have this healthy environment, and we know how it can be. So let's try to put some limitations, to put some regulations in how we can, like they did in Formentera, for example, for the number of cars. And I think it's a good idea, because it's not unlimited, the number of cars or the boats that can be on our coasts. At some time, we have to have the difficult political discussion, because some people understandably don't want to put any limit, but they're also seeing that the quality of the experience is not good enough. It's some people are saying, the tourists are saying, oh, my experience, it doesn't have enough quality anymore because it's too crowded. The roads were congested. So how do we find a balance between the experience of last year and the experience of the year before, when everything was congested? And I think it's right now, before the season starts again, when we can have these discussions and really find solutions, or at least tendencies in how to do things more sustainably.
I mean, there was one very obvious trend that we saw, and that, in the 1 month that Ibiza was open for tourism business fully and properly and completely was, July. And the island was absolutely swarming with people again, the way it always usually is in that particular month of the year. But it seemed to me, or a lot of people kind of reporting, that the standard of tourism was slightly different. They were more high-end tourists. So people, with more money to spend, and there were less of them. So, obviously the restaurants could fit less people in them. The, shops could have less people in them, but people were kind of spending more money. They weren't really seeing a kind of a trend that people were making less money, even though there were less people here. So it kind of implied that maybe people that were actually here when the nightlife season was kind of closed down were more high-end tourists. So you kind of need less of them, if you know what I mean. So I'm just wondering, looking at it from that perspective, who knows what will happen this summer when, things allegedly are predicted to return to normal. I think, what could we do to attract a different kind of tourism? There's so much beauty here. There's so much abundance. There's so many things that Ibiza has to offer apart from this one kind of tourism. Is there a way that we could sort of maybe mix it up and get kind of more of a broad spectrum of tourism coming here to the island?
This is the big question and the big challenge that the government faces, because for latest years they've been trying to really develop a strategy for this to have like a bigger season so that people come also in winter and not only in summer, and to create more value and more alternatives. So I think this is really everybody's responsibility, not only the government, but also business engaging in different activities, because of course if you have a bar in the West End in San Antonio, for sure last summer was not good because there was no people coming from that type of music or tourism, as you said. But if you have the infrastructure, the services, or you're working in that, you won't want to move away from. So it's a responsibility for those companies also to open a bit and diversify. There's something that is starting to be developed that I think is interesting in terms of incubator for small businesses in social innovation and new entrepreneurs around sustainable tourism. So that's I think there are interesting ideas coming in. I think, of course, it's a way forward, but we have to all put our parts. No, it's not only waiting for the government to do it, but then everybody's saying, okay, what can I also do to move my business towards that activity?
I think, there's definitely a focus on how we can sort of change that narrative moving forward and attract people, like I said, from different spectrums far and wide. I mean, last episode, we had these, incredible farmers, 3 amazing women from all walks of life, creating some amazing projects that, really were working towards this idea of regenerative agriculture. And I think, that is obviously something we're all working towards to improve the soil here, and obviously to reduce the impact of climate change by this level of tourism that we are attracting on Ibiza. I mean, that's something that I know that you're also working on. I'd love to maybe talk a little bit more about that, because we know obviously Ibiza Produce, Gabrielle Gambina, who was hosting one of the last episodes of the Spanish version of the podcast, she's obviously driving a lot of that forward. But, in terms of Ibiza Preservation, what are you specifically doing to bring that to the fore?
Yes, we work hand in hand. In fact, Ibiza Produce is one project of Ibiza Preservation. So we created it and we're financing it and we're supporting Gabi, because we think that's one of the critical ideas. And for example, creating the regenerating, what we call now RA, Regenerative Agriculture, it's easy to say RA, community, was also one idea that I had to support Gabi and the farming community, because I saw there is in other countries or in other islands, like in Balearics with the Green Balearics, there's this potential, there's knowledge, and by having again a group of farmers plus NGOs plus investors that really want to do something for Ibiza, this community allows us to really have, I think, the brains focused. We have now many international people on the island interested in the topic. So it's not only farmers, but it's also people that can help them with the comms or with the fundraising. Because the idea around soil regeneration, it's like really, it acts as a sink of CO2. It absorbs CO2 sequestration, just the same as the forest does. We all know that the trees are a reservoir of CO2, but we didn't know that the soil also is, but not any soil. If you plow it, it doesn't work. It has to be left, and you have then like enough organic matter to really be this reservoir. And this is the amazing part, because we're telling farmers they are doing something amazing for the island. It's not only that they're producing food, but they're doing an environmental service, because they actually, when they plant almond trees, it's beautiful for everybody. So how do we pay them the service, the environmental service they're providing? Each of us, tourists that go and have a walk. Why is it only their responsibility to be paying for those trees now that almonds, it's not sustainable so much because, of course, prices are, etc. So we want farmers to do something with the land. We have found that organic CO2 sequestration is a great tool to have an extra income to give the farmers or the landowners. You may have a house and 10 hectares that you just have bought and you're not cultivating. So by knowing that, by working a bit in your soil so that it captures CO2, it could be an amazing tool to pay them back the work they're doing for the land.
I think, We talked about a little bit in the last episode about this new film, Kiss the Ground. And obviously that's, the main theme that they're working towards on that. But what we didn't mention in the last episode was this concept about the land bank, which I love, where people can obviously go to that project's leader and find out about land that's kind of up for grabs on this island. So, if this is one of the key ways that we can obviously keep CO2 emissions to their absolute lowest and create this kind of blue carbon. There's obviously two ways that Ibiza can offset its carbon footprint. One is obviously the Posidonia, the magical work that does, but also, this idea that the soil can help us. And I think this land bank idea to get people perhaps regenerating more of the land could be like a really nice idea. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the land bank is an amazing project. I mean, we also supported it in the past, and now it's Jess, another beautiful lady, leading it under the umbrella of APAEF, which is the Organic Association of Organic Producers. So it's all linked and connected nicely. The land bank itself, what it means is that if you have land that you're not using, you can give it, then it's of course not giving, but you're giving the permission to be used by others. So then there's someone that is Jess that will have in mind, it's like offer and demand. So that she knows what lands are available, what pieces of land are not being used, and who maybe existing farmers or new people that want to work at the land can use it. So she's putting them together, finding stewardship agreements so that everything is very clear and controlled, and so it's for the good for everybody. So that's very, very important. It does relate, of course, to carbon sequestration, but it's only part of the picture. I mean, you can sequester, and of course we're starting with that land in the land bank with farmers that have already offered this land to work on land on CO2 sequestration, but anybody that has a little piece of land can at their home, I mean, even if you have like 2 trees, you can understand what is land regeneration, and you can work towards making your soil richer and to understand how much carbon you're sequestrating. So I would love that if someone is interested in this topic, they can approach us at APAEF or at or Ibiza Preservation, and we're super happy to put to make this community bigger. We're now 50 in the RAC community, in the Rural Agricultural Regeneration Agriculture community, and it's about sharing knowledge, about sharing good practices, about understanding what little we can do, whatever surface we have. It doesn't mean that it's only for those having huge surfaces of land that can start having this framework in mind.
I mean, that feels to me like the number one way, all of us could do something positive right now to put something back into the island, to offset this, crazy carbon footprint. All the people here, as you've just mentioned, 90% of the island relies upon tourism. And if your job revolves around tourism, what's the number one way you can put something back in the island? It's by growing something. It's by, getting that soil back to the quality it needs to be. And it, doesn't involve necessarily buying up a lump of land and having your own farm. It's almost like responsibility-free farming, where we could all get together in collectives and maybe do something. I mean, this sounds to me like, a really, really great way that, the communities could come together, particularly at this moment in time when I think community is like the number one thing that people really need. We're all feeling a bit separated and a bit segregated because of what's going on. And I think, even just walking through Santa Gertrudis on the way here, the bars are closed, the restaurants are closed, we're not able to socialize or get together in the way that we used to. This feels like a really, what a wonderful thing that we could do is to get together in groups and do a little bit of, a little bit of farming.
And another way, which is even easier, for us to compensate emissions, etc. And I would really love that everybody gets a look at it. It's You Capture, this webpage. You with a U, and then capture in terms of capturing emissions. We have an agreement with them between the RAC community and them. So there's a landing page just for Ibiza. So you capture Ibiza, and then any shopping you do there's 20,000. It's an amazing number of partners involved. From Airbnb to Gap to wherever you do your shopping. Once you are part of your capture, you're going to be accumulating and compensating your emissions in if you want, you decided that it's in the Ibiza project. So that would go, so all that savings that you're doing, it doesn't involve any extra spending for you, but it's like the company that is going to be paying to compensate their emissions and giving extra resources to do things in Ibiza around the land bank. That's the project we've chosen to showcase. So that's even easier. No, you don't even need to plant. Even if you do your shopping online through YouCapture, you're going to be helping us.
Oh, I love that. It's, there's so many great projects that you guys are rolling out. But I wanted to talk next about the Marine Forum. So I wasn't able to attend that back in November last year, but I see there's a new initiative that's just been launched by you guys, and that is the plastic-free Balearics. And I saw in a post only today on your Twitter account that obviously, plastic pollution in the sea, for example, isn't just an issue, about plastic bags and our food shopping or drinking from straws in bars worldwide. It's kind of, even in the Arctic now is pervasively polluted by microplastic fibres from our clothes when we wash them. I was pretty depressed to see that was a thing when I was looking at Twitter earlier. And I think, I'm just interested to find out a bit more about what we can do specifically in Ibiza, beyond just the standard recycling and heading to the farms for our weekly veggie box to save on plastic and packaging. But, what can we really do to take action as part of this project?
Well, fibres are like a big topic, but in like very summarizing, of course, if we're using cotton, it's much better. Anything that is artificial that we're wearing when we wash it, really you have these microfibers from the tissue, from the textile, the cloth that goes in the water and then finishes in the sea. Because it goes to the sewage plant and at the end they're so tiny that they're not going to be stopped at the sewage facility. And so that's either, moving to natural fibers as much as you can. And also, I know some washing machines, you can put a special filter and that's like more tiny. Much more tiny, so that the grid is much more, it's much more tiny, and then you're preventing the fibers to go to the water. So that's that's a bit. It involves doing some research about your washing machine and finding in internet what kind of filter. I know there are available, but that's the two solutions. But I would recommend, first of all, trying to use as much natural fibers as possible. And secondly, you mentioned Balearics Plastic Free. We're very happy with this initiative because it involves, we've had external funding from Alberto de Monaco Foundation and others, so that both the work that we have been doing in Ibiza and Formentera and the work that another organization has done in Mallorca, we're uniting forces. So we are kind of doing a special methodology, learning from each other, again, an alliance. And so we're going to have a common methodology for the 4 islands. Menorca is also participating in terms of certification and in terms of finding the good and honradas, we say, honest alternatives. Because the big problem, and you're asking me what can people do, is that very often you want to do something better, but maybe instead of having a plastic bottle, you change and you buy a Tetra Pak bottle. And that's a very dishonest, not honest solution, because maybe you are doing it with your best intention, but the producer should have told you, and he doesn't, that it's much worse in terms of recycling than the plastic bottle, the Tetra Pak. So, or changing a plastic straw for one of this bioplastic that they say, it's compostable, but then not in the compost that we have at home. So, and it gets all confused because you throw it to the yellow bin, and then in the yellow bin cannot be processed because it really cannot be recycled. So what we're doing, and we will have them by March, is some guidelines with lots of detailed information at Balearic level of the honest alternatives, of the really safe and good alternatives to plastic, which first of all is not using anything, which is, if you're using a straw, first and best solution is not to replace it by another type of straw, is not to use a straw when possible, or using, as I was saying with the water, instead of a bottle, have a fountain, have a machine in that produces good water, and you use your glass bottle or steel bottle, so that you're really not replacing one material, but you're finding a solution to really have a long-term alternative to your need, which in case is water, not just to to change the plastic by Tetra Pak. So that's what we're offering with the project, together with our partners from Save the Med and Plastic Free for Menorca. And we're very excited because it also, having this the financing by international also shows the importance of uniting and having all the 4 islands, all the Balearic Islands working together.
It's so confusing, I think, somehow to know exactly what needs to be done. So I'm really looking forward to the publication of that information. I think it's important, absolutely, to have that information, on a shared platform where we can all kind of really see what the story is, particularly for this summer. I did see a really interesting article, actually, and it was naming a man called Miquel Ramis of the Balearics Verde project. And it seems that he's aiming to try and plant 1 million trees on the islands by 2025, which he clearly feels, as we were talking about earlier, will offset the island's crumbling tourism monoculture and sort of green our islands by recovering more of a polyculture. I'm just wondering, do you know about this? Is this actually happening?
Miguel is great. I know him and he's very inspiring. And of course, what he means with these figures, with this 1 million, is that he, I think, would love to help uniting, again, the RA community, the agriculture, regenerative agriculture, sorry, my English. So uniting everybody in all the Baleares with the same vision so that we have shared indicators and we have like a long-term objective. But of course, the difficult part is how do we put everybody working on the same direction, how we coordinate. So I've been now offering our help and talking to him in how we can build around the community that we have already here so that we can count together, so to achieve these objectives. And so it's not having one new movement, but actually putting together what is already being done in Menorca, in Mallorca and Ibiza, and learning from each other in terms of different islands, where there's a lot to learn from Mallorca.
Would you kind of describe that as like another kind of, one person leading the charge in one direction and, it's not part of this kind of more female idea of, working together, building an alliance, getting a community of people together to have like a shared goal and vision and, for something to gain momentum? It's more, I guess it's a different kettle of fish.
That's it. It's a bit top down instead of bottom up. Now we really have been trying with this approach, more feminine, as we said, of having, uniting everybody. And what we would love to help Miquel doing is really trying to achieve in becoming more like an octopus, not having lots of arms, not just like a giraffe with a long neck and one head. But and I think that's maybe the way he's thought about it without having the contacts in Ibiza or Formentera or other islands. It could be maybe seen as this, but I'm sure it can become and a much more articulate and participative process, and we're very much looking forward to it.
Before we round off today's interview, I just kind of wanted to ask you, what was it, when you moved here in 2011, that made you, I guess, fall in love with Ibiza and feel so strongly that you kind of wanted to protect it and take it under your wing?
Well, I had been coming here since I'm a baby. My mother married here, and every summer, since I'm from 71, every summer I've been coming onto the island. And I remember I was looking at pictures the other day and of me swimming at the back of my mom at these amazingly beautiful salinas where very little people, and the water was as beautiful as it is today, but there was less people. And so just having that image and having those memories is what really gives me the passion to think I would love to have really the generations to come to be able to enjoy the same quality, the same beauty, the same abundance of fish. And this we're losing. I mean, there's some indicators, of course, that are worrying. But for example, if we're talking about fish, we have much less. I remember putting just my snorkel and having much more biodiversity in the sea when I was a kid. So what I want to help by working with as many people as possible is really to not only the nostalgia, but it's like, I think in terms of human rights, it's a next generation, and we're talking our sons and daughters and nephews and nieces. It's their right to have a beautiful sea. We cannot just use what we have and deplete it. So it's obvious, and as I said, it is also in the tourists that are going to come benefit to really be aware that this beauty we have a responsibility to protect.
Are there any kind of, books that you've read over the years and the course of the kind of work that you've been doing that have like really, really inspired you that you might sort of recommend to anybody living on Ibiza to maybe pick up a copy of?
I think there's the work from Enrique Salas that are very recent on the economic parts of the economic value, which I also think are very important. If anybody is interested, maybe less inspiring, but the documentary, but very, very good data in how we can put value. For me, of course, the beauty of the environment, I don't need to put it in economic value, but some people need it. So it's very good that we also speak the economic language and that we also can see, okay, what we call blue economy, for example. What is the value of having a natural reserve? What is the benefit for all these other businesses working around it? So putting numbers is also important, and understanding the language. And Enrique Sala has done a very important work around that. But then in terms of inspiration, I would say, for me, nature is less of books than travel. I've been very lucky and been able to see lots of amazing environments from Patagonia to India so it's, for me, nature is images, and that's what really inspires me, I love books, but it's more mental, for relating to the environment. For me, it's, movies, images, or, just last movie I saw from, George Clooney. The latest movie from George Clooney is about the polar circle. They're in the Arctic. It's like a catastrophe, but those images of the sea, of the snow, of the amazing. Well, I think my inspiration is very visual, and it really comes from all these beautiful movies where we've seen the Amazon and the Arctic, the penguins, and that's international level. But I think in Ibiza, we just have to go out any day to the beaches that we have, and you get your inspiration from there.
Thank you so much, Sandra. But I just wanted to talk to you about, finally, the membership that you've launched at Bita Preservation. How we, all this amazing work that you've been telling us about through the course of this podcast, how can we actually support your project?
Well, thank you for the question. We really need support. Some people think, well, this is a 10-year-old, 12-year-old foundation. They don't need other members, and we do need it a lot. And it's been a very difficult year, as you said, last year. And so it's very, very important. Whatever small support we can have, what you can give us, is very, very important. And everything is at Ibiza Preservation website. We have a member section, and we have just a mail. If you're interested, just info@ibithapreservation.org, and we'll be super, super happy to explain you all the potential ways. We're really trying to build a community in Ibiza with our members, so that we have monthly workshops and visits to farms, etc. As you were saying, we do need this community feeling. So what we are actually also giving back to our members is the possibility to have discussions on topics on water, on recycling, on some specific. We're kind of listening to what the needs are and having these monthly meetings, so that we actually have a face-to-face and community and relationship.
Sandra, thank you very, very much for telling us all about the history of Ibiza Preservation and also the work that you're doing. It sounds amazing, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed having this conversation. Thank you so much for having me here in your beautiful home.
Thank you so much for your time.
It was the Ibiza podcast of Gang of Witches, hosted by Youle. See you at the next new moon. Until then, take care of yourselves.
My witches everywhere. I'm calling upon my sisters everywhere, my brothers everywhere. The time has come to gather.